Thatch. How you
How
doing
are
yesterday?
you? Good. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. I love the
I know.
series.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I really enjoy it. I'm anything. I'm into like mobsters, New York, Harlem, all that stuff. I just love it.
It's really hard to find people who aren't. Like the only people who don't love the show that are in my life that will actually admit to not loving it are my boyfriend's parents who are in their late 70s and just are like, oh, it's too violent. Oh, but we'll watch it, but it's too violent.
Yeah, whenever my wife's parents say to me, "Have you got anything to recommend?" I'm always like, "What can I recommend that has no violence in it?" That's always...
Yeah, like virtually nothing.
Well, I'm going to begin by just saying ask how thrilled you were to get the kind of second season. Because I guess when you make something and you really enjoy it, and you kind of have a great experience making it, and you make friends and the casting crew, you must just be desperate for just to get out there and do it again. You must have been so happy when they told you that it had been greenlit for part two.
Yeah, I mean, after we first, you never know what's going to happen. This industry is so unpredictable, right? But you have writers like Chris Brancato and Paul Eckstein, and you got a cast like ours with Forrest and Giancarlo and the story and the background and all the moving pieces that really came together to make it such a strong season one. You think they would be crazy not to renew this, right? But things happen. So I was in Ethiopia with my mom and dad having breakfast, like northern rural Ethiopia, and got a blink of signal and found out that we'd been renewed. And it seemed like the call that would never come because actually it was just before COVID, but there was a long time between season one shooting and season two, obviously. And then that was in February, came back to the States. Obviously, March rolled around and the world was shut down. So it was just this like stop and go, wait and start. And it's just like kind of painful, like never feeling like we were actually going to get to work again, even though we knew it was coming.
Was there a bit of a sort of different vibe on the second series, kind of knowing that it was so kind of well received? I guess that element of mystery of whether people are going to take to it has gone. So is almost like a swagger, or sort of a newfound confidence that comes with the casting crew when you're out there making it a second time?
I think so. I think there was also a little pressure for sure. I know obviously the writers felt it to make a knockout season two because people had expectations. And we obviously wanted to make the best show we could. But I think COVID took a little bit of that kind of, that bravado out of like, little bit of the wind underneath our wings was because we just had so many restrictions and it was such a strange time to be on set. It was like not particularly conducive to creativity, but that's like hats off to writers that we have such a strong season two and to the actors because totally uncharted territory, obviously coming back in a time like this. So maybe we weren't feeling as secure as we would have season two.
Yeah, I was wondering too, because obviously you're a New Yorker yourself. Is the regular person aware of Bumpy Johnson? You mentioned like your boyfriend's parents, who they're in their 70s. For people that have been living in New York or people that are from New York, like yourself, is he a character and someone that everyone kind of knows about?
I mean, I guess if you're really into the genre and you're studying the history of Harlem in that way, then like maybe. But I grew up in Harlem. I hadn't heard of Bumpy Johnson until American Gangster, in which he didn't feature prominently. It was just a bit in the beginning of the movie with Denzel. But no, I'd never heard of Bumpy Johnson before. And I think that's part of what's so exciting about this series is there's not a lot untouched in Hollywood. There are not a ton of new stories being told, right? It's everything kind of gets recycled. You see what does well and you copy that. But yeah, to be able to tell a new story is a pretty cool element of it.
And do you see New York in a different way now? You're making a movie that's kind of set in the, going back, it's like a sort of period piece set on the streets that you kind of know and grew up on now. Has it made you see your own city, your own home in a slightly different way?
I mean, yes and no. I think because I grew up in Harlem and because I grew up with women, I mean, I feel like I know Mayme Johnson, my character, like she's in my bones. All of my neighbors, like, these are the women that kind of like raised me, right? So like, just like super tight-knit community. you know, the ladies with their church hats that you knew, you know, that's Mrs. Cunningham, and like, who just were so like such pillars of community. It doesn't seem really new because that's my world, and that's kind of what I know. But obviously, like, to be able to be transported by costume and set and everything back to the 60s was pretty wild. You know, you're looking at these, you know, MTA buses roll by while you have picture cars on the other side, and you're like, wow, this is what Harlem used to look like. It's cool to have a glimpse into that.
Yeah, I mean, the look of the show is amazing, and the sort of costumes and stuff. Were you able to take anything from set as a kind of souvenir for your time?
No,
I mean,
we're still going. You know, hopefully we're going to get a bunch more seasons. So I don't want to start stealing anything just yet. You know, Mayme's closet has taken a while to build. Right, so many fittings. Everything is so like form fitted, tailored, like pristine. That I don't dare touch anything. You know, but. Maybe when we wrap one day, I'll steal a few pieces.
Yeah, but never mind taking things off set. I'm interested if you took anyone onto set, because I guess when you grow up in the area, were you able to take family members, parents, or friends along just to see you guys at work?
You know, season 1, I didn't. I don't know why. Just we were just getting into the, you know, the swing of things, and I didn't want to be the pesky actress who was like, hey, can I bring all my family and friends to set because they all live here because I'm from New York. So I didn't do that, and then it just season 2 there was zero opportunity for that because of obviously all the COVID restrictions. So maybe when things get back to normal a little bit next season, I'll invite the folks to come see.
I mean, it takes a kind of certain type of person to be the wife or partner of a mobster. You know, how interested are you in that psychology? Because there must be such an inner strength, but such an appreciation that you're going to have to make so many compromises and sacrifices in your life. How was it kind of playing Mayme and kind of getting into that mindset, particularly doing it a second time?
Well, I've never thought that role was like particularly interesting or desirable to step into as an actress, because so many of these women are depicted as these hysterical kind of like, you know, they want all the spoils, all the riches, all the benefits attached to being to these, you know, these wealthy mobsters and these gangsters. But when it comes time to face the music, it's like, well, I didn't, you know, this kind of denial. I don't know where you made this money. You know, I can't believe you're having an affair. Like, it's all par for the course, right? And Mayme knows that. Which is really what makes her so interesting. And she's able to kind of step into his world as a confidant, I think, because she's earned his trust. Like, there's no way for him after 11 years away, right? He's in Alcatraz for 11 years. She totally holds down the family. She watches Margaret. I'm imagining she's taking care of community as well. She's traveling to Alcatraz across country to visit him. He could not then come back and say, well, this is my private life. This is my business, and this is my home. There's no way for him to keep those two separate. So she really earned his trust. And that's what's, you know, she'd had no choice but to be a strong woman. You know, you're raising a child alone as a Black woman in Harlem in the 1960s. Most tumultuous period, maybe until what we're going through right now in our country. So kind of buckling under the pressures was not an option for her, Bumpy's wife or not, you know.
Yeah, I mean, of course, she passed sort of 10 or so years ago. She wouldn't have had the chance to meet her for this. But were you able to meet anyone who knew her? Was there any? I mean, this might be going back to your preparation for series 1, but when doing research, did you get the chance to get kind of first-hand accounts of what she was like?
I mean, no one from the neighborhood had any stories to tell me about Mayme, which was a shame. But everybody wanted to talk about Bumpy. So I'd be out moving the car, and like the older guys in my building would be like, hey, you're on that Godfather of Harlem. You know, my uncle, you know, Junie ran with Chan and everybody had a story. And it got to be a little problematic because I'd be like, guys, I gotta go. Like, I can't, you know, I would love to sit down and talk for 2 hours about the glory days and the golden age of Harlem with you guys, but we can't do this every single time I walk out of the building. Paul Eckstein, whose grandmother was put through secretarial school by Bumpy Johnson. I think had met Mayme a few times. And by all accounts, she was a pretty stern woman. Didn't mince words, was, kind of didn't suffer fools either. So I have to be a little less like myself in this role than maybe I'd like. But
yeah, because I imagine for I know that she wrote a book as well, Harlem Godfather. I imagine for season one, that all that sort of research is a great help. But when you approach a second season, does that research part end and instead you start falling back on what you already know and the character you've already created? Does the biggest asset kind of become yourself in some ways when it comes into a second season?
Yeah, I think so. And with a series, unlike a film, like you're really learning as you go, right? So in season 2, Mayme is in situations and circumstances that we hadn't seen her in season 1. So you kind of have to decide how Mayme would react, and people are constantly evolving and changing. So maybe Mayme in 1963 is not going to be the woman that she is in 1966. Like, this is a huge period for change in race relations, and also, women's rights and the feminist movement. So yeah, there is a little less pressure to feel like tethered to the research you've done season 1, I think. Obviously trying to keep it on track and true, but finding that and feeling more freedom to find it in your work, I think.
Was there anything that you really wanted to ask her? Is there anything you would love to have asked her when in all this kind of process and all the kind of getting into her head and playing? Was there a burning question or something you'd love to have found out to help you get into her head?
To ask Mayme, gosh, I mean, in the series, religion plays a big role in her life. I'd like to ask her about her faith and how much that kind of dictated the decisions she made in her life on her own, in her life with Bumpy, and how she kind of rectified like being this wife of this gangster and being a Christian woman and a woman of faith.
I want to speak as well quickly about Forrest, because I mean, he's so brilliant in this, as he is in everything. It must make you sort of raise your game so much when you're working alongside people who are kind of that quality. Because I guess, yeah, when you're on a set with people, he's one of many sort of such hugely talented people in this cast. It must make the whole sort of working environment so much better in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you could say like, oh, there's the pressure to put your best foot forward and do your best work because you don't want to be the weakest link on a show like yours, right, or like ours. But it's just, as long as you do your own work, I think, and prepare, because there's no rehearsal in television. You come, you block your scenes, and then you go. All the work has already been done, and you find stuff in the scene as you go if you're listening and responding honestly to your partner. But it's like, if you have the gift of working with someone like Forrest, it's almost got to be the best work you do, right? Because you got the best scene partner across from you, and like I say, if you are listening and in the moment and willing to play and learn from, you just feel like it's got to be some of the best work you've ever done. Just
yeah,
or you hope. You really hope and pray, because if you stink, it's your fault. It's not Forrest's,
Yeah. I was lucky enough for series 1 to interview Giancarlo for his role, and I mean, he was one of my favorite interviews I've done in the last few years. He was so full of life, with stories and stuff. Is he like that? Is he like that on set? Is he someone that just has a story to tell at any time?
Yeah, he's great. I mean, when he's really, especially this season, he was on a kind of a tight deadline time-wise. So he was, Giancarlo does everything in the world that's amazing. So he's always going from one set to another. It's like he's got to be a triplet is kind of what the deal is. But so when he's on set, he can, he's focused, and his schedule this season was, they block shot him. So he was shooting, half the scenes of the season that he was in, like in 2 days or something like that. So he was really honed in and on his A game. But he is so he's just charismatic and joyful and incredible. Someone like me, I'm not a particularly shy or reserved person, but he kind of just makes you want to just sit back and shut up and listen. He's got so many great things to say, stories to tell, and such a big energy,
Yeah. And also, like yourself, he kind of comes from, or has been sort of worked his way through the school of Spike Lee as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
And I just wondered about, yeah, because I mean, you know, you've worked with a sort of a whole host of filmmakers now, but you've worked with Spike on a few occasions. What have you learned from your time working with a director as visionary as Spike Lee?
If there's a will, there's a way. You know, Spike is not a person that sits back and lets other people dictate his fate. So persistence and perseverance. He's just a man on a mission. And I think in this industry, that's kind of the way you've got to be if you want to get things done. And he really takes care of his people. He really looks after his family, his 40 Acres family. So it's a reminder that, like, you know, as big as you get, no man left behind. He just never forgets his roots, which is incredible. And it's also, he works a lot differently than a lot of the directors on this season and other directors I've worked with. So it's great to get to see a variety of talents and people in the director's chair, because you do see how different personalities work.
Yeah. My final question is just about, because you sort of mentioned how happy you were to get season 2. I'm assuming you'd be thrilled as well for a third season. Is that something that you can see? Would you love to see Mayme and go further and to see where this character can go and to do this whole experience all over again?
Yeah, I mean, God, I'm ready. It's so bittersweet knowing how the story ends, because, you know, if you do any bit of research, you know that Bumpy Johnson dies in 1968. So we're all kind of counting on our fingers, doing the math, how many seasons that means we could get. And I'm like, well, why don't we do a Mayme spinoff? Like, let's keep this train, let's keep it going. But yeah, it's just to see the progression of Mayme from season 1 to season 2. Mayme, we saw, you know, she was, you know, kind of trying to get her family unit together again in season 1 and keep the info from Elise that from Margaret, that she wasn't her biological mother. Season 2, though, she's grown. Her character is just given this incredible arc. You know, the writers have been so generous and so trusting with the material they've given me. And I've got to have such fun. I don't know how many episodes you've seen, but you see her in some really unlikely situations this season. So yeah, I'd love to see where season 3 goes. I can only imagine, you know, in terms of, you know, her own life as an activist and community organizer, but even just in terms of like where her style goes as the 60s move on, you know. So yeah, I hope we get plenty more.
Yeah, you and me both. It was a great series. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to see more of it. But thank you so much for your time today. Best of luck with the release of the second season. Hopefully, by the time the third season.
Yeah, I know, right?
Third season comes around, we can do junkets like this in person. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Oh God! Well, imagine, please return to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey You Guys.